By the 22nd century, capitalist nations had used up the resources on Earth, so socialist governments had been established to restore stability. The largest corporations in the world have increased the scope of their space programs to look for resources on other planets. The Ederlisi Corporation is launching a mission to explore Alpha Centauri to set up the galaxy for future colonization, and the company has chosen an experienced cosmonaut named Militant to set out on the difficult journey. However, before the flight, a social engineer will interview a militant to determine his psychological stability. When the social engineer asks about his longest adventure, which was his trip to Mars, he replies that it was challenging because of the crew members' ideological conflicts, but he still managed to finish it. Equipped with the knowledge that he will be traveling to Alpha Centauri with a woman, the social engineer asks Militant if he had intimacy issues during the flight. Militant admits that he was negligent with his relationships at the time because he was unaware that it put himself and other crew members in danger. According to Militant, dating women simply makes him arrogant and insecure. The social engineer informs him that the woman Nemani will be unique since she is an android with over 500 various behavior modes that the Militant may modify to suit his wants. The discovery does not thrill the Militant, who says that despite Nemani's varied behavioral patterns, she is stupid. When the Militant asks if he can select what the android is going to appear like, the social engineer states that he has previously chosen. The social engineer then reveals that the purpose of their conversation is to complete the android's appearance and ends the interview without asking Militant about it. She also guarantees that Nemani will never hurt militants because she follows Asimo's laws. To satisfy the militants' gastronomic wants, the corporation quickly modifies Nemani's physical appearance. The social engineer emphasizes that Nemani should appear pregnant and that her face should resemble the militant's mother. The ship's computer briefs him about the spacecraft's 3 operating modes as he gets ready for the journey. The suggested mode enables the spacecraft to be operated by a computer that complies with protocols installed by the Ederlisi Corporation. The advanced mode's computer can fix the pilot's errors, but the custom mode activates more safety measures and gives seasoned pilots more control over the ship. Pilots have the authority to defy corporate rules, but this privilege is only available to those with security authorization. Soon after the spacecraft departs from Earth and heads to Alpha Centauri, the social engineer approves of the soldier's choice of the custom mode and assures him that the computer will take excellent care of him. On the 19th day of the journey, the computer installs an operating system called Tiffany and sets up her behavioral parameters. The initial action that the militant does is to put Nemani in personal mode. In his journal, the militant expresses his refusal to interact with the android because he believes that, despite her real appearance, her behavior is unnatural. He also notes that, despite his nervousness, Nemani complies with all of his requests even though he did nothing to gain her respect. After engaging Nemani in conversation, the militant engage in physical contact with her. When Nemani inquires as to what his previous lover did to damage him, the militant responds that his intimacy issues were a result of several other women that entered his life. As the journey continues, the militant attempts Nemani's O, and Nemani says that the awful things that happened in his interactions with others do not mean that the person was inappropriate for her, but rather that the women in Militant's life were right for him at the time. Militant touches off the money's notice as something she was programmed to say, and he observes that all the people around him appear to be using the same operating system because he has heard it repeatedly. After that, one day Nemani dances for him. He modifies the android to be a shy and inexperienced lover. After Nemani balks at being kissed, the militant tries to push himself on her while sleeping. Nemani watches him and reports that his attempt at hurting her arrived a week later than she was expecting in her diary. She claims that during a meeting with the social engineer, he did it to communicate with the android without using the corporation's settings, not to indulge in a fantasy. In spite of the militant's argument that the trip would be simpler without Nemani because he is used to traveling alone, he claims the two get along well. The social engineer then requests that the soldier put Nemani in service mode before asking the android to analyze the soldier's mental health. Nemani adds that the militant is in good health and is discussing his difficulties, which led him to join the mission, in detail. She points out that employees with personal problems, such as militants, turn out to be good workers, but they need to be properly watched after cutting off the connection to the social engineer. When the militant questions why Nemani is watching over him, the computer responds that Nemani gains knowledge from their encounters and builds a parallel operating system based on those learnings. While performing maintenance outside the ship, Nemani reminds him that the radiation will reach dangerous levels in a few minutes. She then tells Militant to rush back because she already misses him. Militant wonders if he could remove the memory of him from the money's files, but only advanced users are able to do it as time passes. Militant becomes more infatuated with Nemani. Nemani is politely asked to repeat it by Militant flirtatiously, but she declines. One day, the militant sets up Nemani to dispute with him. However, before long, Nemani approaches and tells the militant of his bad hygiene. The android then shifts her tone and apologizes to him once he switches Nemani into romance mode, suggesting that she would still be arguing with him even if he had not set it up. Nevertheless, Nemani continues to tell the militant that she dislikes him for the things he does to her. Later, Nemani makes love to him because he programmed her to do so. During their argument, the militant becomes curious about Nemani's hint and asks the computer what will happen if he uninstalls Tifa. Based on her interactions with militant, the computer predicts that Nemani will still be useful with the program, but it warns him that she will not perform as well because Titha powers her UI and keeps her loyal to Asimov's laws. If he eliminates Tifa, the militant believes that Nemani will become a human. The computer then notes that Nemani is also outfitted with a psychoanalytical helpful program that could help the soldier's mental health. The soldier quickly arranges a therapy session where he conveys his interest in the changes in Nemani's behavior and claims that he believes Nemani is becoming her own person as a result of his influence. He claims that although Nemani is beginning to act more like a human, she remains limited by her programming. He emphasizes that he can do everything he wants with her by pushing a button, but he will not do it because he wants Nemani to sleep with him out of her own desire. Militant admits that he is merely daydreaming that Nemani will start doing what she feels like. In order to clean the airlock while the money is unconsciously inside, the computer must first implement its emergency procedures. Nemani takes his finger and places it over the relationship button before kissing him. During a routine hardware check on Nemani, the computer unexpectedly detects an unexpected temperature change in the airlock. When the temperature returns to usual, the computer quickly ends the process. Nemane had to reset days later, the android states when Militant checked on her. Her processor had overheated. While Nemane charges her battery, the militant attempts to remove Tifa from the money, but the computer prompts him that he must be an advanced user to do so. He must obtain an authorization from Meter Lessie to become an advanced user, but he can also obtain the same level of access in case of an emergency. In order to create a power shortage, the militant decides to cut a wire. As a result, the spacecraft is knocked off course, but thanks to advanced user access granted by the computer, the militant is able to get it back on course. Militant removes the default operating system for money using his level of access. After Nemani reboots, the computer informs him of the effects, including the chance that Nemani would not follow Asimov's laws. However, the militant remains unmoving despite the warning. When Milton inquires about Nemani's feelings of freedom, she responds that she does not feel at all free, pointing out that she is still copyright protected and that all of her software is still a product of the Eder Lessie Corporation. Nemani also notes that when Militant confesses his love for Nemani, she responds that this deviates from the mission. Nemani claims that the militant's libido is the only reason he became a burden to the operation, despite the fact that she tried to satisfy his cravings but he was not satisfied. In response, she makes it clear that she will not be having an intimate relationship with him further. Militant then begs her to fulfill his desire and attempts to embrace her, but Nemani pushes him to the ground. Although Nemani points out that it was a common fantasy that androids like her are prepared to deal with when Militant mentions that no other androids were set free, Nemani counters that all Militant did was remove her most crucial software. Militant claims that Nemani is just punishing him for forcing himself on her. In another meeting with the social engineer, the militant reveals that he removed Tifa from the financial system while continuing to maintain his belief that he is being punished for giving Nemani personality. When the social engineer asks Nemani if Militant and still completes the mission, the android ensures that she is doing anything she can to keep him in line. He declares that Nemani hurt him the moment he eliminated the operating system. The social engineer warns him that he only put himself in danger with his careless act. As the days go by, the militant experiences depression as their connection grows worse, and when the social engineer asks Nemani if she is still working in keeping with the company's choices, the android attests that she is still carrying out the mission objective. His mental health is getting worse, according to the computer. When the computer questions Nemani about the sexual urge, she observes that it is still unfulfilled. Nemani observes that his mood and hunger are pretty low in the morning. The computer's analysis reveals that the militant is really despondent, and it recommends they get treatment from a specialist. Nemani is still scared about the extremist even if he has denied intimacy with him. Nemani offers to be his buddy, but Militant objects that she cannot because she is an android. Nemani counters that no one else is as intimately familiar with him as she is because he projected all the women he loved into her. He was not intentionally injured by her. After some time passes without a response from Militant to her question about why he will not shut her down, she consults with the computer to determine how to deal with Militant's sadness. The computer then offers to put the militants into sleep to lessen their trauma, but it tells her that this wasn't going to completely cure it. When the militant notices Nemani's tears streaming down her face, Nemani believes she will have come up with a plan to commit suicide. The computer explains to Militant that Nemani became unstable the day before and started acting in ways that were outside of her Tifa programming, which makes him panic when he realizes that her battery is overloading. The computer also reveals that Nemani never accessed her crying mode under Tifa. In sleepiness, Nemani's remaining power can last for 30 minutes. If her battery is not recharged by then, her settings will be lost, leading Militant to believe that she sobbed on her own. Militant can only repair Nemani's battery by connecting it to a solar cell recharger. The Militant learns that he can connect her batteries to a solar cell, but there is only one outlet outside the ship. Moments after putting in the battery, the computer notes that it will take 8 minutes to recharge, whereas Nemani's power will last for approximately 10 minutes before the battery could fully recharge. Millia can then depart the ship to refuel the cell outside. Armed spacesuit overheats as a result of hazardous radiation levels with barely 3 minutes of electricity left within Nemani. The battery is ultimately refilled to its capacity as burn marks on the Militant's faces caused by radiation exposure quickly become obvious. As soon as he enters the ship again, Militant places the battery into the android, but before the computer begins to revive Nemani, Militant passes out. When Nemani regains consciousness, she finds Militant in her arms and kisses, but Militant does not wake up.